The world stopped for a moment when the headline flashed across every screen. Wealthy businessman's wife poisoned by mistress. Saved by her estranged grandfather, a retired doctor. The news anchors spoke with urgency, their voices echoing through homes, offices, and cafes. Clips rolled one after another. Flashing ambulance lights, a swarm of paparazzi outside St. Mercy Hospital, and a blurred image of a young pregnant woman lying unconscious on a stretcher. Her hospital gown was drenched in sweat, her lips pale, one hand still resting protectively on her swollen belly. Social media erupted like wildfire. Hashtags trended within minutes. Hashtag poison wife, hashtag billionaire affair, hashtag miracle doctor. Comment sections overflowed with fury, sympathy, and disbelief. Who would do such a thing? Why would anyone hurt a woman carrying life inside her? In one corner of the hospital, an elderly man with tired, trembling hands watched the chaos unfold on a flickering screen. His name, Dr. William Hart. The look in his eyes was not just of concern, it was personal. The camera of fate began to rewind, peeling back the headlines, the flashing lights, and the judgmental whispers, until it reached a time when everything seemed perfect. Before betrayal. Before poison. Before the world knew her name. It all began in a mansion built on lies, with love that had long since died, and a woman named Elena Cole, who was about to learn that even the most beautiful lives can hide the darkest secrets. The Cole mansion shimmered like a palace of glass and gold, marble floors gleaming, chandeliers spilling light like liquid stars. To the world, Elena and Adrian Cole were the embodiment of success, a billionaire power couple expecting their first child. Their faces often graced business magazines and charity covers, smiling under perfect lighting. But behind those photos lay a silence so heavy, it could crush a heart. Elena, 6 months pregnant, moved slowly through the echoing halls, her hands resting protectively on her belly. The baby kicked gently, a reminder that she wasn't completely alone, even if her husband had long since vanished into his own world. Adrian's late nights were becoming routine. His excuses, meetings, investors, urgent calls sounded hollow now. At breakfast, his chair often sat empty, his untouched coffee growing cold. When he was home, his laughter belonged to someone on the other end of the phone, never to her. Yet Elena smiled through it all, hiding her pain behind soft politeness and perfect posture. She filled her quiet hours sketching baby names in a leather notebook. Amelia, Grace, Noah, names full of hope she barely felt. That afternoon, as she picked up Adrian's blazer to send for dry cleaning, a glint of gold caught her eye. A single long strand of blonde hair, shimmering with a perfume she didn't wear. Her heart lurched, her throat tightened. It wasn't morning sickness this time. It was heartbreak. She sank onto the edge of the bed, fingers trembling as she clutched the hair. Outside, the wind rattled against the glass, and for the first time, the house that once felt like a dream began to feel like a cage. Beautiful, cold, and full of lies. The ballroom glittered under 1,000 golden lights, laughter and violins mingling in perfect harmony. It was the annual Hope Foundation Charity Gala, hosted by the Coles, a night of glamour, wealth, and reputation. Elena, dressed in a flowing ivory gown that hugged her growing belly, stood beside her husband like a porcelain doll placed for display. Her smile was poised, her eyes searching. Adrian, in his sharp black tuxedo, looked every inch the devoted husband, until the woman in red arrived. She was impossible to miss. Long auburn hair framed a flawless face. Her crimson satin gown shimmered with every step. When Adrian turned, his expression shifted. Admiration, familiarity, guilt, all tangled in one fleeting look. "Elena," he said, clearing his throat, "meet Victoria Hale, our new business consultant." Victoria extended her hand with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "It's such an honor to finally meet you," she purred. Elena shook her hand, feeling the chill beneath the warmth. "Likewise," she replied softly, her instincts already screaming. Throughout the evening, Elena watched subtle glances exchanged across the room. When champagne glasses clinked, Victoria leaned close to Adrian's ear, whispering something that drew a smirk. one Elena hadn't seen in months. Cameras flashed, immortalizing the moment. The husband's grin, the mistress's red lips, and the wife's hollow eyes in the background. The orchestra swelled, couples twirled. But Elena's world had gone eerily still. The woman in red wasn't just a stranger. She was a warning. As Adrian placed his hand lightly on Victoria's back, guiding her toward the dance floor, the lights reflected off her crimson gown, the color of passion, danger, and betrayal. That night, the first visible crack in Elena's perfect life became impossible to ignore. A week later, the marble halls of the Cole mansion echoed with uneasy calm. Elena spent her days resting in the sunroom, her body weary but her heart heavier still. When the doorbell chimed that afternoon, she wasn't expecting company. Yet there stood Victoria, radiant as ever, holding a bouquet of lilies and a saccharine smile. "I heard you haven't been feeling well," Victoria said smoothly. "I brought you something special, an herbal tea my mother swore by. It helps with fatigue." Elena hesitated but forced politeness. "That's thoughtful of you." They sat across from each other, the scent of chamomile and honey filling the air. Victoria stirred the tea carefully, her every movement graceful and deliberate. Elena sipped, grateful for the warmth against her trembling hands. For a brief moment, she thought maybe she'd misjudged her, maybe kindness still existed. But by evening, dizziness clawed through her body. The room spun violently, her chest tightened, breath slipping away like sand through fingers. The teacup shattered against the floor as she collapsed, gasping for air, one hand instinctively clutching her belly. Panic erupted. Servants screamed. The paramedics arrived within minutes, carrying her limp body out on a stretcher. Victoria stood by the doorway, her expression unreadable, except for the faintest curl of satisfaction at the corner of her lips. "And Adrian?" He merely sighed, rubbing his temples as if inconvenienced. "She's always dramatic," he muttered coldly. Even the servants shuddered, because at that moment, love had completely left the Cole mansion. The ringing phone pierced through the stillness of Dr. William Hart's quiet home. At 70, he had long since hung up his white coat, trading hospital corridors for garden walks and medical journals for novels. But when the voice on the other end spoke, "Critical emergency, suspected poisoning, pregnant patient, we need your expertise," instinct overruled age. Within minutes, he was in his car, rain streaking across the windshield, the city lights blurring past. St. Mercy Hospital was chaos when he arrived. Nurses rushing, monitors beeping, the sterile air thick with urgency. "Patient, female 28, 6 months pregnant," a nurse briefed him quickly. "Unidentified toxin, pulse dropping fast." When Dr. Hart entered the ICU, his breath caught. The young woman on the table looked hauntingly familiar. Soft features, gentle lips, and eyes half closed but strikingly reminiscent of someone he once knew. His gaze shifted to her chart. The name read, Elena Hart Cole. That single word, Hart, hit him like a defibrillator shock. His daughter's last name before marriage. Memories crashed over him. His daughter Claire storming out after an argument, vowing never to return. He hadn't seen her since. He moved closer, trembling hands steadying with purpose. "Get me a tox screen now," he ordered. His mind raced with medical precision and personal dread. Could this fragile young woman be the child his daughter once carried? His granddaughter. As machines beeped around him, Dr. William Hart silently vowed he wouldn't lose another generation to fate. For 3 endless nights, Dr. William Hart refused to leave the ICU. The monitor's rhythmic beeping became his heartbeat, and the faint rise and fall of Elena's chest, his only prayer. The toxin was rare, spreading rapidly through her bloodstream, threatening not only her life but the fragile one growing within her. Every hour was a battle against time. Antidotes, transfusions, oxygen support, endless calculations between science and hope. The nurses whispered that it was impossible, that neither mother nor child would make it through the night. But Dr. Hart worked with a precision that bordered on desperation. his trembling hands guided by something deeper than duty, love he hadn't known he still possessed. When Elena's vitals finally stabilized, he exhaled for the first time in days. "She's past the danger," he murmured, his voice breaking. The hospital called it a miracle. But for him, it was destiny reclaiming what time had stolen. Still haunted by the familiarity of her face, Dr. Hart ordered a quiet DNA test, a secret he carried alone. The results came days later, confirming what his heart already knew. Elena was his granddaughter, the daughter of Claire, the child he'd lost to pride and silence decades ago. He sat in his office, staring at the report, tears clouding his eyes. Fate had brought her back to him, broken, poisoned, but alive. He placed a gentle hand on her chart and whispered, "You're safe now, my child." But he couldn't tell her yet. The wounds were still fresh, the world around her still dangerous. So he kept the truth close to his heart, silently vowing that this time, he would protect his family, even if it meant going to war with the world. Days passed, and Elena slowly regained her strength. The hospital room smelled faintly of lilies and antiseptic. Her world reduced to beeping monitors and whispered footsteps. But outside those sterile walls, rumors began to swirl. The poisoning wasn't an accident. Anonymous leaks hinted at foul play. And soon, reporters camped outside the hospital gates, hungry for a headline. One night, as Dr. Hart reviewed her charts, he paused near the corridor. Through a half-closed door, he overheard a heated conversation. Adrian's voice, low but sharp with irritation. "You said she wouldn't survive," he hissed. On the other end came a familiar tone. Icy, feminine, unmistakable. "Victoria." "I did my part," she snapped. "You handle the rest." Dr. Hart's stomach tightened. He didn't need more proof. His instincts told him the truth was darker than anyone imagined. Later that evening, Elena confronted Adrian, her voice trembling. "You knew, didn't you? About the tea." Adrian scoffed, brushing past her. "You're imagining things again. Maybe it's the medication. You've always been emotional." His coldness broke something inside her. For a moment, she wondered if she really was losing her mind, until a quiet nurse slipped into the room, eyes darting nervously. "Mrs. Cole," she whispered, placing a flash drive in Elena's hand. "You should see this." That night, on the flickering hospital screen, Elena watched footage of Victoria entering her room, vial in hand, moments before her collapse. Her heart froze. The betrayal was no longer suspicion, it was fact. The next morning, Elena sat upright in her hospital bed, the flash drive clutched tightly in her hand. The truth was no longer buried. It pulsed with every beat of her heart. Dr. Hart stood beside her as she handed the evidence to the authorities. Her voice steady despite the tremor in her chest. "It wasn't an accident," she said. "My husband and his mistress tried to kill me." Detectives took her statement, faces grim as they reviewed the footage. Within hours, Adrian was summoned for questioning. He arrived at the hospital furious, his charm replaced by desperation. "You don't know what you're doing," he hissed. "This could ruin everything, our name, our child's future." When bribes didn't work, he turned to threats. But Elena didn't flinch. The woman who once cried in silence now met his eyes with quiet strength. After Adrian stormed out, Dr. Hart sat beside her, his wrinkled hands trembling slightly. "There's something you should know, Elena," he said softly. "I didn't just save your life. I saved my granddaughter's." Elena blinked, confused, until he continued, telling her about Claire, his lost daughter, her mother. The words shattered years of loneliness inside her. Tears streamed down her cheeks, not from sorrow, but from the warmth of belonging. For the first time, she wasn't alone. Wiping her eyes, Elena whispered, "Then we fight together." And they did. Not with guns or vengeance, but with the most powerful weapon of all, the truth. Elena sat in her hospital bed, laptop open, the glow from the screen reflecting in her determined eyes. The world had taken everything from her, her peace, her trust, almost her life, But this time she would take it back on her own terms. Dr. Hart watched silently from the corner, pride and fear blending in his gaze as she clicked record. Her voice was calm, steady, stripped of bitterness yet burning with truth. "My name is Elena Cole," she began, her tone clear and resolute. "6 weeks ago I was poisoned, not by a stranger but by my husband's mistress. And he helped her." What followed were facts, undeniable, cold, and devastating. CCTV footage of Victoria sneaking into her hospital room. Voice messages between her and Adrian, plotting her silence. Medical reports signed by Dr. Hart confirming the poisoning. There were no tears, no theatrics, only truth delivered like a blade. She ended with a single line that would soon echo across the internet. "When they tried to end me, they only made me stronger." The video went live. Within hours, the digital storm hit. Hashtags trended worldwide. Hashtag justice for Elena. Hashtag poisoned for love. Hashtag mistress exposed. News channels replayed her video. Influencers shared her words. Victoria's modeling deals collapsed overnight. Sponsors withdrew. Her face vanished from billboards. Adrian's empire bled dry. Investors fled, board members resigned. His name became synonymous with scandal. And through it all, Elena remained composed, her baby bump visible beneath her hospital gown, a symbol of life defying death. Her voice, soft yet unshakable, became a movement. Millions watched her and saw not a victim, but a survivor reborn, proof that truth once spoken could destroy empires. It ended not with glamour but with sirens. Victoria Hale was arrested at a luxury hotel just hours before her flight to Paris. She wore oversized sunglasses and that same shade of red lipstick, the color that once turned heads, now marking her as the villain of a national scandal. Cameras flashed as officers led her out in handcuffs, her composure cracking under the weight of exposure. In custody, she broke down quickly, her voice trembling. "It wasn't me. Adrian made me do it," she cried, desperation echoing through the interrogation room. But no amount of pleading could erase the footage, the texts, or the vial bearing her fingerprints. The trial became the event of the year. Broadcast live, dissected on talk shows, debated in cafes. When Elena took the stand, the courtroom fell silent. Her calm testimony, honest, unembellished, captured the nation's heart. She spoke not as a victim, but as a woman who chose truth over vengeance. When the verdict was read, guilty on all counts, a wave of justice swept across headlines. Victoria's once iconic red dress, displayed in news clips and memes, transformed into the symbol of her downfall. The color of seduction turned into the stain of betrayal. Adrian Cole's empire collapsed faster than anyone imagined. Overnight, his frozen accounts turned luxury into emptiness. Cars seized, properties auctioned, and his once loyal associates fleeing like shadows at sunrise. The mansion that once echoed with power and arrogance now stood dark, abandoned and stripped bare. In his penthouse, Adrian sat alone, surrounded by silence more suffocating than any courtroom verdict. His phone buzzed endlessly, not with business calls, but with notifications from news outlets exposing his crimes, his affairs, his downfall. The same media that once crowned him visionary billionaire of the year, now called him the husband who poisoned his own legacy. He poured himself a drink, staring at the flickering television screen where Elena's face appeared. Poised, radiant, strong. She was giving a speech about survival and courage, her baby in her arms, her words inspiring millions. For the first time, Adrian truly saw her, not as a possession, but as the woman he destroyed, and who rose from his ruins. He looked at the glass in his hand, then at his reflection in the shattered mirror before him. The man who once had everything now had nothing but regret. The final price of his greed. His own reflection, broken beyond repair. Months later, sunlight filters softly through the white curtains of a quiet hospital room. Elena lies in bed, her newborn daughter cradled gently in her arms. Tiny, perfect, and full of promise. Gone are the flashing cameras and cold headlines. In their place is peace. the kind that grows only after surviving the storm. Dr. William Hart enters, his trembling hands reaching out as Elena places the baby in his arms. For a long moment, he says nothing, just stares at the small bundle that carries his bloodline, his redemption. Tears glimmer in his weary eyes as he whispers, voice thick with emotion, "Your mother would have been proud, my dear." Elena smiles, the ache in her heart replaced by quiet gratitude. She has found both her family and her purpose. Months later, she establishes the Hart Foundation, an organization devoted to helping abused and abandoned women rebuild their lives. Her name becomes a symbol of healing, her courage a movement. One evening, Elena posts a short video, her baby on her lap, both smiling softly at the camera. Her caption reads, "Forgiveness is power. But never forget who you are." The clip spreads across the internet, not as gossip, but as hope, a full circle of pain turned into purpose. The world remembers her not as the poisoned wife, but as Elena Hart, the woman who rose, healed, and built love from ashes. To everyone watching from the outside, Sophia's life looked like a fairy tale. She was the beautiful young wife of Ethan Cole, a man whose wealth and influence stretched across the city. Their faces graced magazines, their hands always intertwined at charity galas, their smiles practiced and polished. But once the cameras stopped flashing, the truth was far from golden. Behind closed doors, Ethan's affection came with conditions. Silence, obedience, perfection. Sophia had traded her freedom for the illusion of love. Every word she spoke was measured. Every step she took was watched. When she found out she was pregnant, she cried tears of both joy and fear. She prayed the baby would soften Ethan's heart, that maybe fatherhood would bring back the warmth she once saw in his eyes. Instead, it unleashed something darker. His mood swings grew violent, his jealousy sharper, and his words crueler than ever before. He accused her of trapping him, of ruining his image. Each night she lay awake, hand on her stomach, whispering to the tiny life within her, promising protection she wasn't sure she could give. The mansion's golden walls had become her prison, and love her most painful illusion. The rain lashed against the windows that night, lightning slicing through the sky as if echoing the chaos inside the Cole mansion. Ethan stumbled through the door, the stench of whiskey heavy on his breath, his tie hanging loose around his neck. His eyes, once full of ambition, now burned with frustration and fury. Sophia approached cautiously, her hands trembling. "Ethan, please, you've had too much," she whispered, her voice soft and steady, trying to calm the storm in front of her. But he wasn't listening. His mind was consumed by the loss of a multimillion-dollar deal, by the whispers of betrayal in his business circle. "You're the distraction, Sophia," he roared, slamming a glass against the wall. "You and your pathetic emotions. Always crying, always weak." His words cut deeper than any wound, but the violence that followed broke her completely. When she tried to defend herself, his hand struck her across the face with brutal force. The second blow sent her crashing onto the cold marble floor. Pain ripped through her abdomen, sharp, unbearable. She gasped, clutching her stomach, feeling the warm trickle of blood beneath her trembling fingers. "Please, the baby," she sobbed, her voice barely a whisper. Ethan didn't look back. He stormed out into the rain, slamming the door behind him. Alone, Sophia reached out toward the crib she had lovingly set up just days earlier, her tears mixing with the blood on the floor. "Hold on, my little one," she whispered into the silence, but deep down she knew the storm had already taken everything. The sterile white walls of the hospital blurred before Sophia's swollen eyes as she blinked awake. Every breath felt heavy, every sound distant, the rhythmic beeping of the monitor, the murmur of nurses in the hall, the rain still falling outside. She reached instinctively for her belly, but the hollow silence that followed told her what her heart already knew. The child she had dreamed of holding, the tiny heartbeat she had cherished, was gone. A nurse quietly placed a hand on her shoulder, eyes full of pity. "I'm so sorry, Mrs. Cole. The trauma was too severe." The words sliced through her like glass. Sophia turned her face away, tears pooling against the hospital pillow. She wanted to scream to disappear, but all that escaped was a broken sob that echoed in the sterile room. Hours later Ethan arrived, immaculate in a suit, as if he'd just come from a meeting, not the scene of a tragedy. His expression was cold, detached. "You should rest," he said flatly. "The doctors said you'll recover. Be grateful I didn't lose my company too." Sophia stared at him, her heart turning to stone. The man who once swore to protect her had destroyed everything she loved, and in that moment, her grief turned into something sharper, the beginning of silent, burning hatred. The hospital doors swung open with a force that made everyone turn. General Marcus Hayes, tall and commanding even in his late 50s, strode in with an authority that silenced the corridor. His military uniform wasn't necessary. His very presence radiated power. Nurses stepped aside as he demanded to see his daughter. When he entered Sophia's room, his steely composure shattered at the sight before him. His little girl, pale, bruised, and lifeless in a hospital bed, looked nothing like the vibrant woman he once knew. He moved to her side, taking her fragile hand into his own. "Who did this?" he asked, voice trembling not from weakness, but from restrained rage. Sophia couldn't speak. Her tears were answer enough. The sight of her silent suffering burned deeper than any wound Marcus had ever endured in battle. 4 years, he had been distant, believing that Sophia's marriage into wealth would protect her better than he ever could. But seeing her broken body, he realized his mistake. He had trusted a monster in a suit. That night Marcus made a vow, not whispered, but declared in his heart like a soldier's oath. Ethan Cole would not simply fall. He would be stripped of everything he cherished, his reputation, his empire, his legacy, until the entire nation saw the truth. This would not be vengeance fueled by rage, but justice carved by precision. And when it was done, Ethan would wish he had never crossed a Hayes. Marcus Hayes had never retired from strategy, only from the battlefield. Within days of his vow, his old military instincts awakened. He reconnected with his trusted intelligence circle, former officers and analysts who owed him favors from the old days. Together, they began dissecting Ethan Cole's empire with surgical precision. On the surface, Ethan's businesses gleamed with success: luxury real estate, international trade, and charity foundations. But beneath that polished image lay rot. Marcus's men uncovered secret accounts offshore, documents of tax evasion, fake charitable donations, and even hidden payoffs to silence competitors. Every piece of evidence painted Ethan not as a successful businessman, but as a criminal masquerading as a gentleman. Marcus catalogued everything: names, dates, transactions, building an airtight case that could bring down an empire. But vengeance for him wasn't about speed. It was about precision. He refused to simply expose Ethan. He wanted to break him psychologically, the way Ethan had broken Sophia. So the leaks began, slow, deliberate, and devastating. First a partner backed out of a deal, then an investor demanded an audit, and soon whispers began to spread in business circles. Meanwhile, Sophia healed under her father's watchful care, unaware of the quiet war unfolding behind closed doors. Marcus never told her, not yet. He wanted her peace untouched until the day she could look her abuser in the eye and see him powerless, destroyed by his own greed and the hand of the father who loved her beyond measure. The morning Ethan Cole woke up to his name splashed across national headlines, the world he had built on arrogance and deceit began to collapse like glass under pressure. "Coal Industries under federal investigation," screamed every major outlet. Newscasters repeated his crimes in loops: tax fraud, money laundering, forged contracts. His phone buzzed endlessly, not with support but with betrayal. Partners demanded explanations, investors pulled out, and his once loyal board members announced emergency meetings without him. Within hours, federal agents froze his bank accounts. His mansion, once filled with servants and laughter from extravagant parties, now echoed with silence and panic. Reporters surrounded his gate, cameras flashing as they shouted questions about his downfall. He slammed the windows shut, his heart racing, his arrogance cracking into fear. Ethan tried calling his lawyer, but even his legal team began to distance themselves. Everyone who had praised him yesterday treated him like a disease today. At night, he watched the news coverage replay his fall. Leaked documents, secret recordings, and images of him smiling beside politicians he had bribed. He smashed the TV, screaming Marcus Hayes's name, though he had no proof. Deep down he knew it was him. Marcus had come back for vengeance, and this time no amount of wealth or power could save him. Every door that once opened for Ethan now slammed shut. For the first time in his life, the man who made everyone else kneel was the one being crushed under his own empire's weight. When Ethan Cole was finally dragged into court in handcuffs, the moment felt like poetic justice. The once celebrated millionaire who had ruled over business galas now stood under harsh fluorescent lights, wearing a wrinkled suit and a hollow expression. Reporters packed every inch of the courtroom, their cameras flashing like lightning. The crowd buzzed until the door opened and Sophia stepped inside. The room fell silent. Dressed in a simple white suit, she radiated quiet strength. No longer the frightened woman who once trembled under Ethan's control, she walked with dignity, her father's presence steady behind her. When she took the witness stand, her voice didn't shake. She recounted the nights of verbal abuse, the bruises hidden under makeup, the way he destroyed her spirit piece by piece, and the night she lost her baby. Gasps filled the courtroom. Ethan's lawyers objected repeatedly, trying to paint her as unstable, but their words fell flat against the undeniable evidence Marcus's team had collected. Photos, medical reports, recordings, and financial proof of Ethan's crimes. When the judge finally spoke, his tone was grave. "Ethan Cole, you are found guilty on all charges: corporate fraud, assault, and abuse." The crowd erupted. Sophia closed her eyes, tears slipping silently down her face, not from sorrow but release. Marcus placed a hand on her shoulder, his voice low and firm. "Justice at last." For the first time in years, Sophia felt free. The aftermath of the trial swept through the nation like wildfire. Every news channel replayed Sophia's testimony, her calm yet powerful words echoing across living rooms, offices, and schools. Social media erupted with hashtags like #JusticeForSophia and #StandWithSurvivors, transforming her story into a movement. Talk shows invited experts to discuss domestic abuse awareness, and charities began campaigns inspired by her resilience. Marcus was hailed as a national hero, not just for his military service, but for standing up for his daughter when the system once failed her. Politicians referenced the case during parliamentary debates, pushing for stricter laws protecting women from domestic violence. For countless victims who had suffered in silence, Sophia became a symbol of hope, proof that courage could dismantle even the most powerful abusers. Meanwhile, Ethan's empire crumbled beyond repair. His name was erased from company buildings, luxury brands cut all ties, and his former allies avoided his calls. The mansion that once symbolized his wealth was auctioned off, every dollar used to fund shelters for abused women, at Marcus's request. As Sophia stood before a sunrise one morning, breathing freely for the first time in years, she realized the truth. Her pain had sparked a revolution, and her freedom had become her greatest victory. Months turned into seasons, and Sophia began to find light again. Therapy, time, and purpose became her medicine. The foundation she built grew rapidly, a safe haven for women who had endured the same horrors she once faced. She poured her pain into action, visiting shelters, giving speeches, and offering comfort to those who thought their lives were over. Each story she heard reminded her how far she had come, from broken and voiceless to strong and fearless. General Marcus, though still stern and watchful, softened every time he saw his daughter smile. He often attended her events quietly, staying at the back of the crowd, his heart swelling with pride. The woman who once wept in silence now stood before cameras and audiences, giving others the courage to rise. It was during one of those outreach programs that Sophia met Dr. Andrew Lawson, a psychologist known for his empathy and quiet strength. His words didn't try to fix her. They helped her heal. He listened more than he spoke, and in his presence, Sophia felt safe, something she hadn't known in years. Over coffee and shared stories, friendship blossomed into something gentle and real. For the first time, she dared to believe that love, the kind built on kindness and respect, could still exist. The garden glowed under the golden hues of sunset, its calm beauty a stark contrast to the pain it represented. Sophia knelt before a small marble plaque engraved with her baby's name, a name she had never spoken aloud until now. Softly she traced the letters, her tears falling not from grief, but from peace. The gentle rustle of flowers and the distant sound of birds filled the silence, as if the world itself was offering her comfort. Marcus stood beside her, his strong frame silhouetted against the fading light. When he rested his hand on her shoulder, his voice trembled, something rare for the hardened general. "He took your child," he said, eyes glistening, "but he'll never take your strength. You carried pain with grace, and turned it into power. I couldn't be prouder." Andrew joined them quietly, holding a bouquet of white lilies, symbols of purity and remembrance. He placed them near the plaque, then took Sophia's hand in his, steady and warm. In that moment she felt surrounded by love, the kind she once believed didn't exist. As the sun dipped below the horizon, Sophia looked toward the sky and whispered with a bittersweet smile, "For you, my little one, we won." The wind carried her words like a promise, a vow sealed by peace, justice, and an unbreakable spirit.
He wasn't supposed to fall in love with her. In his world, feelings were weaknesses, and weaknesses got people killed. But the moment Ethan laid eyes on her, on Valentina Morty, the only daughter of the most feared mafia boss in the city, he knew his rules were about to be broken. Her father had hired him to protect her. From threats, from enemies, from the dark corners of their family empire. But no one warned him that the biggest threat would be her. When Ethan took the job, he told himself it was just another assignment. He'd been a bodyguard for years, disciplined, cold, unreadable. He didn't get attached. But Valentina wasn't like the women he'd guarded before. She was fire in designer heels. Smart, stubborn, and sharp-tongued enough to make even the most dangerous men hesitate. The first time he met her, she didn't even look up from her phone. "Another one," she said, barely glancing at him. "My father changes bodyguards like shoes." Ethan said nothing, just stood there in his tailored black suit, sunglasses on, scanning the marble entryway for threats. "Do you talk?" she asked, "or are you just here to look intimidating?" He finally looked at her, and for a second the world went quiet. "Both," he said simply. She smirked. "Good, let's see how long you last." Days turned into weeks. Ethan followed her everywhere, the art gallery openings, the midnight drives, the endless charity dinners that masked her father's criminal operations. He learned her patterns before he realized it. She always double-tapped her coffee cup before sipping. She hated when people lied, even in small talk. And she always looked out the window when she was sad, like she was searching for a world she couldn't touch. And though he shouldn't have cared, he did. One night, Valentina slipped out of a family dinner without telling anyone. Ethan found her standing on the balcony overlooking the city, hair whipping in the wind, eyes shining with tears she wouldn't let fall. "You shouldn't be here alone," he said softly. "You shouldn't care," she shot back. Silence, then she laughed, but it cracked halfway through. "You know what it's like," she whispered, "to be trapped in a world you didn't choose." For the first time, he met her gaze without the mask of duty. "More than you think." That night, something shifted. Not in the air, but between them. Something dangerous, something real. He should have walked away. But instead, he stayed. After that, the lines blurred. She'd sneak out for drives, and he'd follow. Not because it was his job, but because he wanted to be there. One night, they ended up at a quiet diner outside the city, just the two of them, pretending for a few hours that they were normal. "Tell me something true," she said, stirring her coffee. "I don't do personal," he replied. "Try." He hesitated, then finally said, "I used to believe people like me didn't deserve love." She stared at him, something breaking behind her eyes. Maybe that's why we find each other. He shouldn't have let her say it. He shouldn't have looked at her that way. But he did. And when she smiled back, it felt like the first time he'd seen sunlight in years. A few weeks later, she texted him for the first time. "You still awake?" Valentina asked. "Always," he responded. "Meet me by the pool," Valentina texted. He almost didn't go, but curiosity and something deeper won. She was there in a silk robe, the moonlight catching her hair, her phone glowing in her hand. "I couldn't sleep," she said. "Every time I close my eyes, I see that look you gave me at the diner." His throat tightened. "Valentina, tell me I'm imagining it." He couldn't. She stepped closer, until he could smell her perfume, vanilla and danger. "Then don't," she whispered. And before he could think, before he could remember who he was or who she belonged to, she kissed him. Slow, desperate, inevitable. It was wrong, forbidden, a betrayal of everything he stood for. But it was also the only thing that had ever felt right. From that night, there was no going back. Their messages grew longer. Her laughter became softer. His heart, the one he thought he'd buried years ago, started beating again. But in the shadows, someone was watching. A bodyguard's job was to protect secrets. But what happens when he becomes the secret? Because one morning, before Ethan arrived at the mansion, Valentina's phone buzzed. Unknown number. "Your father knows." The message hit her like a bullet. "Your father knows." Valentina's hands trembled. Her phone slipped, crashing against the marble floor. The sound echoed through the silent hallway like a warning. She froze. The chandelier light shimmered across the floor as she stared at the shattered screen and the truth behind it. He knew. Her father, Don Morty, the man who controlled half the city and every life within it, knew about her and Ethan. The forbidden texts. The late-night meetings. The pool. Everything. When Ethan arrived at the mansion that morning, he felt it immediately. The air was heavier. The guards didn't meet his eyes. The silence wasn't ordinary. It was expectant. And then, a voice from behind him. "Ethan." Don Morty. Standing by the glass staircase, his suit immaculate, his tone calm, too calm. "Come to my office." Ethan followed, each step measured, his pulse pounding. The door shut. The Don turned, holding a phone in his hand. Valentina's phone. "You're good at your job," he said, eyes cold. "You kept her safe, but tell me, what were you keeping her safe from me?" Ethan said nothing. "You see," the Don continued, "I trusted you. I brought you into my home, my family." He tossed the phone onto the desk. "And then I find this." Ethan's stomach turned. The screen showed their texts. Every word, every midnight confession, every "I miss you." "You disappoint me," the Don said quietly. Ethan's hand twitched toward his gun, then stopped. He knew better. "I should kill you where you stand." "Then do it," Ethan said, voice steady. "But she's innocent, don't touch her." The Don's eyes flashed with something darker than anger. "You think I would hurt my daughter?" He stepped closer, his tone soft but venomous. "I'll make you disappear before she even notices you're gone." "You can't keep her locked away forever," Ethan said. "Watch me," the Don growled. Ethan was gone before sunset. No goodbye, no message. Just a shadow erased from her world. Valentina begged her father to explain, but he said nothing. The next day, he assigned her a new bodyguard. A man she didn't know. A man who looked at her the way Ethan used to, before she learned what trust could cost. But love doesn't end with distance. It hides. It waits. It bleeds quietly until it finds a way back. For weeks, Valentina went through the motions, charity events, meetings, dinners, her heart somewhere else. Then one night, a letter appeared in her car. No name, just handwriting she'd never forget. "I'm sorry, I'll come back when it's safe." Her breath caught. She looked around, scanning the shadows. And for a split second, she saw him, across the street. Watching her. The same suit, the same eyes. And even though he was standing in danger's reach, she smiled. From then on, they lived in stolen moments. A passing glance across a crowded room. A folded note slipped into a bouquet. A text sent from a burner phone. "I still choose you." He watched her from afar, guarding her in secret, just like before, but now the enemy wasn't out there. It was her father. The dawn had tightened security, cameras everywhere, men tailing her. He wasn't protecting her anymore. He was imprisoning her. Then one night, the walls finally broke. Valentina's new driver took a wrong turn, straight into an alleyway. The ambush came fast, gunfire, shouting, chaos. She ducked, heart racing. The windows shattered. And then his voice. "Get down." "Ethan." He was back. He yanked open the door, pulled her out just before the car exploded. For a second, time stopped. Smoke, sirens, the world in flames. "You shouldn't be here," she gasped. "You shouldn't be alone," he said. Their eyes met, fire reflected in both. And for the first time in months, they weren't. They ran. Through the city. Through the night. Every safe house was compromised, every call a risk. But for a few fleeting hours, they were free. Inside a dim motel room, Valentina finally spoke. "He'll never forgive us." "I don't care," Ethan said. "I'd rather die than live pretending you don't matter." She shook her head. "You don't understand. He's not just angry, he's sending people after you." "Let them come," he said. "I'll protect you." "And if he finds us," she whispered. Ethan looked at her, his eyes softening. "Then we run faster." Outside, the rain began to fall. And in that motel room, small, fragile, borrowed from time, they found something real again. For one night, love won. But by morning, the sound of engines outside shattered the illusion. Tires screeched, doors slammed. The Dawn's men had found them. Ethan grabbed his gun. "Go out the back." "No," Valentina said, voice breaking. "I'm not leaving you." "Please," he begged. "For me." She kissed him once, soft, desperate. "I'll find you again." He smiled. "You already did." The door burst open. Gunfire, smoke. A scream. Then silence. By the time Valentina reached the street, the sirens were already wailing. The motel burned behind her. No sign of him. Only his watch cracked, still ticking, lying in the dirt. She picked it up, clutching it to her chest. And for the first time, the mafia princess fell to her knees and cried. Everyone thought Ethan was dead. But months later, she received another message. "Unknown number. You still awake?" Her heart stopped. Because that's what he always used to text her, before everything fell apart. Weeks turned into months. The city moved on. The Morty family rebuilt, the newspapers printed their lies, and Valentina. She learned to smile again. But every night, when the world went quiet, she'd still reach for her phone. Sometimes she'd scroll through old messages. And she'd whisper to herself, "Then answer me." Her father never mentioned Ethan again. The day after the explosion, Don Morty declared the matter handled. He'd built walls around his daughter, not out of love, but fear. Fear of losing control. But what he didn't know was that love doesn't vanish in fire. It survives in ashes. It hides until it's ready to burn again. One night, almost a year later, Valentina attended one of her father's charity galas. Same venue, same guards, same suffocating routine. She wore a red gown, It wasn't just a color, it was a statement. The room shimmered with laughter, fake smiles, and deals sealed behind champagne glasses. And then, across the crowd, she froze. A familiar silhouette. Broad shoulders, dark suit. The same way he used to stand when he was watching her from a distance. Her heart stuttered. It can't be him. But then he turned, and she saw his eyes. Ethan. The glass slipped from her hand, shattering on the marble. Her breath caught. He looked older, scarred, alive. She wanted to run to him, but something stopped her, her father, walking right toward him. Don Morty smiled. So, you're the ghost that refused to stay buried. Ethan didn't flinch. I came to finish what I started. Protecting her, the Don said. Loving her, Ethan replied. The room went silent. For the first time, even the Don had no words. The Don studied him for a long moment. Then he nodded to his men, who slowly lowered their weapons. You saved her once, the Don said. That night in the alley, I've seen the footage. Ethan's eyes flicked to Valentina. I'd do it again. The Don exhaled. Something changed in his expression, years of pride giving way to something else. You disobeyed me, he said to his daughter. I fell in love, she replied. With the one man I told you not to. Maybe you should ask why. Her voice didn't shake, it didn't beg. It challenged. And for the first time, her father saw her not as a child, but as a woman. The Don turned to Ethan. You could have killed me that day in my office. Why didn't you? Ethan's jaw tightened. Because she loves you, and I couldn't hurt what she loves. Silence. Then the Don nodded once, slow and heavy. You've got more honor than half the men in my house. He turned to leave, then paused. If you're going to love her well, because if you break her heart again. Ethan cut in quietly. You'll have to get in line. The Don smiled, just barely, and walked away. The music started again. The crowd exhaled. And Valentina. She finally let herself breathe. Ethan stepped closer. You thought I was gone, he said softly. She laughed through tears. I buried you twice. Guess I'm bad at staying dead. She hit his chest playfully, then let her hand rest there. You scared me. You saved me, he said. When that motel went up in flames, I thought it was over, but I couldn't die knowing you thought I left. She shook her head, smiling through tears. You're insane. For you, he whispered, always. And in that crowded ballroom, under chandeliers and gunmetal glances, the mafia boss's daughter kissed her bodyguard. No hiding. No fear. Just two people who defied the world, and finally won. Months later, they left the city. Bought a small house by the coast. No guards, no walls, just quiet. Sometimes, she'd catch him staring out at the water. Do you ever miss it? She asked. The danger. He'd shake his head. The fire found me again, right here. And when he kissed her, she knew what he meant. Because sometimes, forbidden love isn't a tragedy. Sometimes, it's the story that finally sets you free.